You're tuned into Counseling Calls on WUCC 99.9 FM. Various mental health topics, special guests, and most of all, your calls. Sponsored by Life Choices Pregnancy Care Center of Aiken. Make the choice for life today. Aiken Christian Church, a traditional church with an untraditional approach. And Aiken Christian Counseling, professional counseling from a Christian perspective. Your host, Pastor Keith Usry, LPC. And now we invite you to Call the Christian Counselor. All right, good evening and welcome once again to Counseling Calls. This is March the 5th. It is 8:30 p.m. and you're on live with Counseling Calls. So obviously if you're listening to this at a different time, it is a rebroadcast, and do not call in. But if you're listening with us tonight here on Thursday, March 5th, then we encourage you to call in tonight, 803-335-3131. That is our number. You can follow us on Facebook Live. You can send in comments there. And as always, you can, during the week, send in comments or questions to counselingcalls@gmail.com. And we have some comments from some listeners from last week. And so I want to just take a moment to go over a couple of these. Here are some comments from last week's show. We had Pastor Ken McDonald with us, and we were talking about alcohol addiction. Had one comment from a listener, said, I always enjoy hearing that testimony, even though I've heard it a whole bunch of times. And we're thankful for that comment. Also, another listener said, I think I do have a problem, and listening to the show gave me some hope. Well, that's certainly what we wanted to accomplish, so we're glad to hear that. I love this next question. Is Celebrate Recovery like AA? Well, unfortunately, you're not going to get the answer to that exactly till March 26th, because we have someone coming on from our local Celebrate Recovery organization in Aiken, and so we will be answering that question in full. A lot of similarities, a lot of differences, and we'll let them explain that, so make sure you tune in for that future show. And then we had one question that I wanted to acknowledge from that show. And the question was this: do you think people can recover even if they're fairly old and still drinking heavily? Absolutely. Never too late. And I'm sure Pastor Ken was here, he would echo that same thought as myself. It is never too late. And, you can be healed, and no matter what's going on in your life, whether it's alcohol addiction or really anything for that matter, you can absolutely, and through the power of the Lord Jesus Christ and some strong support and counseling, you can make a change no matter what point you are in your life. So I certainly encourage you to move forward in that. So grateful for these. Thank you for these questions and these comments. And of course, you can send those about this show. And also realize I have a large part of my audience that listens to these on rebroadcast. So let me encourage you, you can still send in questions or comments, even if you're listening to a rebroadcast. And just like I did now, I'll acknowledge those on the next show as well. So let me encourage you to do that. All right. So hope everybody's doing well. We've got a great topic tonight. We're going to be focusing on senior adult mental health, some physical health, and these types of things. And as always, I like to start us off with a scripture. 1 Timothy 5:1-2. Do not rebuke an older man, but exhort him as a father, younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, younger women as sisters with all purity. Very, very special, our senior adult population, and I'm really fond of them, especially since I'm kind of one myself now. So tonight, I am excited to have the guest that I have. Now, first of all, let me tell you who she is, and that's not the reason she's on the show. This is Sabrina Balls, and she is my daughter. And this is kind of awesome for us to both be on the radio. And I've told her all about my old radio days when I came out of high school. That was a lot of fun. So welcome to the show,
Thanks
Sabrina.
for having me.
Now, just tell us a little bit, just briefly, what you do, which is the actual reason we have you on the show.
Okay. So first of all, I have my public health bachelor's degree, which kind of got me started in a career that I didn't even really know I was going to get into until it kind of happened. But I work for the Lower Savannah Council of Governments Area Agency on Aging, and I'm a human services coordinator. So I do everything that has to do with the aging and disabled population and connecting them to community resources and in-home services that help them live in their home independently without being placed in a nursing home or facility.
All right. That is fantastic. That, friends, is why she is on the show, because she has something to offer. And it's kind of awesome in all the guests that I've had so far and the ones I'm going to be having. That's real neat, because even though a lot of them are personal friends and even family and things like that, what's neat is they really have something to offer. And so I'm not just sticking people on here because I know them or I love them, but they've actually got things to offer. So the Lord's really worked that out, and that's just fantastic. Really excited about that. All right, so you are listening to Counseling Calls on WUCC 99.9 FM. The views expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of this radio station, its owners, or its employees. All right, we're glad to have you here, and as I said, tonight we're going to be talking a lot about senior adults, and they have some unique things that they have to face in their lives. And so we want to talk about some of those things. There are some stages of development that we enter. And of course, there are stages of development we all go through. And each one of those stages has certain tasks that we need to accomplish to be our most healthy. And when not, there's problems. And so we're going to focus on the two latter stages because we are talking about the senior adult population. All right. And so these are from Erickson's Stages of Psychosocial Development. I want to give Mr. Erickson all the credit because he did come up with this. And it says that at each stage there is a crisis or a task that we need to resolve. All right, so this one is generation versus stagnation. So this, here I am, people in their 40s going into their mid-60s, into this middle adulthood. And this involves finding your life's work and contributing to the development of others through activities such as volunteering, mentoring, and raising children. And even doing radio shows, I think, must come in that. And so very much that is true. And so that is a very important stage. Now, probably most of the people that we're really going to be referring to are going to be from the next stage, which is integrity versus despair. So when you get to that mid-60s on to the end of life, okay, we're in a late adulthood. And there's two ways to go with this. You either feel a sense of satisfaction or a sense of failure. And that's very, very difficult to deal with when you're a senior adult, because there's nothing worse than kind of getting near the end of your life and feeling like, well, maybe you didn't take advantage of all the things you should have, or you didn't do this right, or you didn't do the other right. We all kind of want to leave here feeling like, you know, we've done a pretty good job, not perfect, but a pretty good job, and feel like maybe we've left some things that we've passed on and all those types of things. So these are some of the things. And if you are children of aging parents or grandparents, then that's what they're going through. And so some of the things that's going to be heavy upon their mind is just that whole fact of being able to feel good about where they are, you know, kind of go out with a bang and all that kind of stuff.
And as you're aging, you're losing your physical and mental independence, which is a really hard thing that seniors are facing. And that's ultimately all of the things that affects their health all boils down to the fact that they are realizing that they're losing their independence. And that causes a lot of depression and a lot of anxiety and all of those things that go with that.
Yeah, that's a tough one. When and those of you that are in even this first group we talked about, like myself, you start to realize things that used to just be so simple that you could do and you didn't think about it. And all of a sudden you come to realize, maybe I can still do that, but it hurts me for 3 days.
Right.
Or, I can get down there, but I'm not sure I'll be able to get up by myself. And so that begins, and then it only gets worse as you progress on into that second stage we were talking about. And to where more and more things that you wish that you could do and that you want to do, you just can't do. And so that's a very difficult thing to deal with. So what do we do about those things? We'll be talking about that in a little later. All right, so Sabrina, let's get into some of the things that you're going to talk to us about. Share with us a little bit about the things that you find with working with this senior adult population. What are some of the big obstacles and everything they face?
Right. So there's a lot of different things that affect your health. And this, I'm talking about your physical, your mental, and your spiritual health. And all of those different sectors of your health affect each other. So you have one thing going on physically that can turn into also a mental issue, and then ultimately a spiritual issue as well, as you're going towards the end of your life and wondering, why does God still have me here? What is my purpose in life to be here when I feel like I'm just wasting away and I'm just not physically here anymore, or I'm not mentally here anymore. But the aging population, to kind of define the population we're talking about generally, it's those who are 65 or older. And I'm also have experience with the disabled population, which is anyone who's under the age of 65 that's receiving Social Security benefits as well. And so I know that from my experience in my education, and my undergrad, I was starting to see the things that I was learning in a classroom come to life right before me. And one of those things is the rate of depression and anxiety and mental health issues in the senior population. I thought that it was kind of surprising at first and foremost, because that's a generation that did not really discuss mental health.
Yeah.
There was this stigma about mental health. It's something that you didn't talk about. It's nothing that you acknowledged. And it was kind of like the generation of suck it up and just deal with it.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing where the people who were hush hush about it when they were our age are the ones who were on these medications. It's very prevalent that there's a lot of depression and anxiety and other, bipolar and other mental health disorders that they're seeing. And some of them aren't even aware that they've been diagnosed with it. They don't even know that they're taking medicine for it.
So when you're out there, do you see people this age a little more willing to embrace their mental health and deal with it, do you think?
Let's see. I think in general, because we are trying to relieve that negative stigma, that it's something that they can talk about a little bit more. But that's one of those questions that I have to fish for a lot.
Right.
People, when I ask them what they've been diagnosed with and what they take medicine for, usually I ask that question because most people are not willing to divulge that to me until I ask and make sure that they know it's a safe place to talk to me about those things that they're not comfortable talking about. So I have a couple of statistics because I did
Chip off the old lot.
That's right. Now, all the statistics and information that I've gotten off of the CDC, National Institute of Mental Health, the World Health Organization, and the Alzheimer's Association.
Okay.
And one of the hard hitting ones that I saw was that about 80% of older adults have at least one chronic health condition.
Okay.
50% of them at least have two or more chronic health conditions.
Wow.
And there's an increased likelihood of developing depression in correlation with illnesses that cause independent functioning to be limited. So there's an obvious correlation that the more you lose your independence, the less likely you are to develop these mental health issues in life.
Okay. And listen, I'm sure we've got some seniors out there listening. And if you would be willing to just call in just for a few seconds, a minute, and just share with us some of your struggles
Right.
or your successes or your feelings about mental health, the number is 803-335-3131. So give us a call. We would love to talk to you. We're here with Sabrina Balls, and you're listening to Counseling Calls on 99.9 FM, covering the CSRA. All right, so let's think about some more of these issues with the senior adults. Now, what else do you have for us, Sabrina, to tell us about?
Well, I also have another statistic too that I looked up that says that, and this is also a huge thing. So, of course, with any family unit, money is always an issue when you're on a low income.
Sure.
And one of the other statistics that I read was that older adults who experience the burden of medical cost for health care are significantly more likely to report symptoms of depression. So there are a lot of different things that affect your health, and there's some social determinants that you can't really help. Those are conditions in which you're born into, that you grow up in, that you live in, that you work through, and you age into. And some of those social determinants for seniors is first and foremost the low income and the fixed income. When you're living on retirement and Social Security, the cost of medications, your insurance, the cost of doctor's appointments, hospital stays, surgeries, and also your geographical location has a lot to do with it as well, because most rural areas have a lack of community resources, have lack of access to doctor's appointments and transportation and things of that nature. And also, like for government funded programs, like I work to serve seniors under, there's a lack of funding and, a lack of financial freedom to help people in the ways that they need them. And often we see barriers and gaps in their care, their quality of care, and what we're able to do for them.
So you often then face frustrations over seeing an absolute real need, wishing
Yes.
you could do something about it, and it's just
Right.
not possible.
Right. And I have to walk out of their house feeling like that falls on me, because I
course
can't
it
give them
doesn't.
everything they need. But yes, yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And
wow.
that's
Got to be frustrating.
Correct. And there's a lot of health barriers that that seniors are facing too. And a health barrier is something that restricts access to health services and care in a timely manner. And then there's also health disparities, which are preventable differences in the burden of disease, injury, violence, or opportunities for optimal health. So we're talking about socially disadvantaged populations, usually based on race, ethnicity, gender, education level, income level, or disability as well. So all of these things kind of all add up to affect your physical and your mental health. Some things that you can change and some things that you cannot.
Yeah, and of course, as always, there's always a much more complex picture than simply, or there's this one thing and it causes problems. It's always like a puzzle you have to put together, and pretty much in mental health, and that's what I'm always talking about. When someone goes to see a counselor, it's usually not just there's this one little thing and that's the only thing that's
Right.
causing me a problem.
Absolutely.
And that's why we have to get all the backgrounds and all these kinds of things, because there's just this puzzle that you have to put together and all kind of influences. So what would you say overall, with all of the population you see, what would you say is probably, if you had to pick one, the biggest obstacle that they face?
The biggest obstacle?
The biggest. If you had to pick a number one.
That's really hard.
I'm sure.
Because there's so many different things that go into it. But there's two ways to answer that question. So it depends really on what your incapabilities are.
Yeah.
If it's a physical health issue, seeing someone physically not being able to take care of themselves anymore. And then when it comes to people with dementia and memory disorders, it's the physical. I mean, it's either like your mind is working and your
Sure.
mind wants what your body can't do, or if you have dementia, your body can do but your mind can't.
Wow.
And so that's a really, really hard thing for people to accept, that they're not able to do the things that they've been doing for years and years independently. And then it's really hard for the people who are caring for them as well.
I'm sure that is very, very difficult. So we are talking about senior adult health, and that is both physical, mental, and spiritual. And here on Counseling Calls, and we're talking to Sabrina Balls, who is with the Lower Savannah Council of Governments. That's a mouthful.
Yeah, Lower Savannah
That is
Council
hard
of
to
Governments
say.
Area Agency on Aging.
Wow.
Imagine having to say that every time you call someone on the phone.
Yeah, that
and
would
they're
have
like, "What
to
did you
be-
say?"
That would have to be very difficult, I would think.
Yes,
for
very
sure.
very long acronym.
All right, so we're going to take a little break, and I got to pay some bills here so that we will be able to keep talking. And I will allow you this too. Special case, you're allowed to say hi, Mom, because she's watching.
Oh, hey, Mom, I love you.
So I don't normally have my guests do that. This was a special case, so we're going to be back here in just a moment. All right, we'll be back on Counseling Calls. Let's listen to this word from our sponsors.
Aiken Christian Church is a non-denominational church that started 7 years ago in the Aiken area. Recently, we have moved back to Aiken at 562 East Pine Log Road. Our services are held on Sundays at 10:30 a.m. We offer traditional preaching and old hymns as well as Holy Communion each week. We are a very welcoming and loving congregation that would love to add you to our family. For more information, go to aikenchristianchurch.com. We hope to see you Sunday.
Life Choices Pregnancy Care Center of Aiken is open Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. and Tuesdays from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., offering free pregnancy tests, referrals for free sonograms, parenting classes, and material resources for baby, mom, and dads. Call for an appointment today at 803-649-9890.
All right, and here we go. All right, and this one I want to talk to you about. This is one of my favorite sponsors, me. Aiken Christian Counseling, and I want to tell you about a counseling skills seminar that's coming up. Ways off, but we want to talk about this. It's coming up on May the 2nd, Saturday, May the 2nd. Have you ever wondered why you do the things you do? Why do you think like you do? And why do the same things keep happening to you? Well, you can learn in this intense one-day seminar the origins of these things, the effects, and the healing process. I, Pastor Keith Usry, will present a dynamic, insightful, but easy to understand seminar on basic counseling issues. And this is done so that not only that will help you at the seminar, but give you tools to take forward with you. And so that's coming up on May the 2nd, Saturday, May the 2nd. There's a limit of 25 persons for this seminar. And so you'll want to go ahead and start signing up early. It will be all day, 9 to 5 at 562 East Pine Log Road inside of Aiken Christian Church. So give me a call if you want more info or to sign up for that, 803-341-0506. All right, we are on Counseling Calls, 99.9 FM, and we are coming to you by way of local radio here in the CSRA. We are coming to you on cwchrist.com, literally from anywhere in the world. I'm hoping we'll get a caller from somewhere like really far off sometime, although it could be like in the middle of the night or something there, so they may not want to. And you
Like they can't sleep and they're just sitting there awake because they have nothing else to do.
Maybe if I do a show on insomnia, then I'll probably get some guy from like Canada at 3 a.m. that'll call and say, yeah, I can't sleep, eh? So who knows? But we thank you for joining us here on Counseling Call, and we're talking about senior adults, and both of us have a very special heart for this population, and I always have, even before I was one. And obviously you have that, and I see that passion in these senior adults, and I can tell the way that you talk about them, even and helping them and serving them and all these things.
Absolutely.
And so we're looking at these mental health issues, and a lot of times, there's this isolation, because as you get older, sometimes a spouse dies. Sometimes I think we may have a caller here, so hold on. We're going to take a call in just a moment. You are on counseling calls. Who am I talking to?
Hey, this is Ken. Is it okay to ask my question now? I turned the radio down for a
All right, you got the radio turned down, Ken? All right, Ken, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Aiken.
All right, Ken from Aiken, you've got a question for us. What you got?
Yeah, just kind of, and maybe she doesn't have experience with this, but I was just wondering, like, what kind of possible coping skills can people in their 50s and early 60s kind of start thinking about or doing to kind of help them as they may go into depression, into health issues and stuff, or if someone's early on in that, what kind of coping skills, or how do you counsel somebody like that?
Okay.
I don't know if that's off track, but that's
No,
that's a good question. It's a hard question.
That's right on track, Ken, and that is a big thing, and you've kind of led us into what we're going to talk about later anyway, and it is, and there's some things that I think you can do. Number one, I think when you get down to the issue of whether you feel good or bad about the things that you've done in your life, you may have to forgive yourself. There may be some things that maybe you could have done better, but rather than go into depression and despair over this, really work towards forgiving yourself, or perhaps even forgiving others, or maybe even trying to, if it's possible, to make amends with someone. Maybe you feel like you weren't the best dad at times, or the best mom or friend, or whatever it may be, and you could try to make amends with someone like that, and just turn to God and just ask God to forgive you and to help and heal you. And it's important to try to just put it in perspective and remember that nobody's perfect, and I'm sure that every one of us, when we get to that age where it's kind of almost time to depart, we're probably going to have all kinds of things we'll say, oh man, I wish I could do that over again.
I think also too, a really good way to cope with those things is to be aware and educated. Sometimes I say it's a blessing and a curse to be very aware of what's going to happen when I'm older, because I'm younger. Older people don't think that I can relate to that, but because of them, I can. And it's very important that you stay ahead of things. Don't wait until a tragedy happens to have notions in place to when if somebody can get sick overnight and it kind of feels like it just kind of goes and is a downfall, and if you're not prepared for possible things that you might have to face when you're dealing with caregiving for someone that you love, or if it's yourself, it's best to stay educated and be on top of things. Go ahead and ahead of time, be getting ahead of the curve, looking for resources, looking for what your options are, and kind of just making a game plan for ahead of time. I think that's a really good idea to do as well.
Yeah. So hopefully those are some helpful things, Ken, to answer your question. We hope so, and and thank you for calling in to Counseling Calls. All right. Thanks.
Good. Well, thanks.
All right. Alrighty. Thank you for listening.
Okay.
All right, and you too can give us a call here in the studio. We are live, 803-335-3131, and you can give us a call if you would like to ask a question or make a comment or share with us about your own experiences, whatever the case may be. You can also send us those comments and questions over Facebook Live if you would prefer to do that, but we love having you call in, certainly. So some very good questions. This is not an easy thing to navigate, as you go through this process. And I think that you really have to try to grab onto the positives, because even though, as I said a while ago, there's probably things that we would all say, I wish I'd done that different or better, or maybe I really even blew this or that. There's also should be some positive things, and we don't need to be so hard on ourselves that we don't give ourselves credit for the good things that we did do and the things we were successful at.
Right. And I think too that another major thing is that when you are losing your independence, whether it be physical independence or mental independence, there's this question that older people are like, why am I still here? I feel like I'm sitting here wasting away. I can't leave my house. I can't do anything for myself. I'm depending on everyone else and I've become a burden on them. So what's God's purpose for still having me here when I feel like I'm just in the way and I'm making things more difficult for other people?
I hear that one a lot.
Yes.
I hear that as a pastor.
I do too.
A lot of times, and it's like, I'm no good for anything. Why am I here? What's the point? Why is he, why doesn't he go ahead and call me home? And, and I have to remind him, he's kind of in charge of that. So,
I know
don't rush him.
That's probably one of the, so I really wanted to touch on the whole basis of lack of community or family support.
That's a good one.
Yes, it's a huge thing. So number one, I think that the hardest thing that I see is people who are losing their spouses and losing all of their family. We're now seeing a trend because of medicine and the advancement in healthcare, though it still has its issues. We're seeing a trend of a lot of people who are outliving not only all of their family members and friends, but even sometimes their own children. So they're dealing with things that they never thought they would have to deal with. Not only have you lost all of your friends and everyone that you were able to confide in and your family and the people that you looked up to for wisdom and guidance, now you're having to bury your own children, which is a whole different coping thing. And when I see, it's really, really hard when someone loses their spouse. It's hard for a lot of reasons. And the main reason is that a lot of people, once you've been married to someone for almost your entire life and having to not only navigate living your life without them, but navigate your life with needing help from other people and that have to take the place of some of the responsibilities and burdens that spouse would have carried. And that's really difficult. And I know there's so many different instances that stick out in my mind, but this one that happened early on in my career when I was not very experienced was going to visit a woman who was in her hospital bed and home dying of cancer. And this was 3 weeks before Christmas. She grabbed my arm and she looked me in my eye and said, "Why am I here right now? I know that I might not be here at Christmas, but if so, this is my last Christmas." And she was just in tears and crying. And I'm literally like in my, mid 20s.
Wow.
I've never experienced that. It was really, really tough to see her, a woman, a faithful woman of God who's questioning God's purpose for her still being here. I'm miserable. I'm in pain and I'm sitting here in this bed. There's nothing I can do. My husband's killing himself to take care of me. And I know that I'm going to leave him here very soon. And that was a really, really, really tough thing. I think that was one of the first times that I really opened my eyes to what the hard things that you have to go through when you're in aging, because obviously when you're young you don't think about those things unless you're dealing with that population like I do, and I'm well aware of all of those things. And it's really hard to speak life onto people and to know the right things to say and carry wisdom to people who are much older than me, lived much longer than I did, and they still struggle with some of those same fundamental questions that other people have. Why am I still here?
Absolutely. And especially when they undergo such a transition.
Yes.
You've been married forever and then all of a sudden that person's gone.
Yeah, you become one
your
with
life
them.
Just changes in just so many ways immediately.
Right.
I mean, 5 minutes later, your world is spinning out of control. It's all different. You feel that great sense of, what am I supposed to do now? Maybe that person did this or that or the other, and you're like, oh gosh, what am I going to do now?
Right.
And so
or my husband took care of all the finances, and now I have no idea how to pay the bills.
Oh.
Or I don't know what kind of insurance I have. My husband took care of that. Or my wife always cooked. I never learned how to cook for myself. Now I can't do it. As all those things, you're depending on that other person so much, and you don't think about it until something bad happens, that you need to learn those things from your spouse so you can live independently afterwards.
Absolutely. So maybe that would be a good tip for folks that are still married and that you've still got your spouse, share those things with
Yes,
each
communicate
other.
those with
And
those.
it's not that we're wanting to be grim and wish anything on anybody, but really you need to prepare each other because you don't know which one of you will be gone first.
Right.
And so to both be prepared so that at least you can take that little bit of trauma
Right.
away from that event whenever it happens. And at least once you kind of regain your composure a little bit, you
Right.
can know how to take care of business and the things like that.
Right.
Let me just throw a wild one out there. I want to see what you think about this one, Sabrina. What about older folks getting a little dog?
Older folks getting a little dog.
Yeah, for companionship, to fight the loneliness and the isolation.
I see that all the time.
Do you see folks? with
Yes,
the-
I have.
Okay.
We have so many animal lovers, but here's the only problem: is that when you're older and you can't take care of yourself, can you take care of an animal?
Yeah.
That's one thing that I worry about. But absolutely for companionship, I don't know how many times people have told me that this dog or this cat is saving my life. This is the only friend that I have. I mean, when you're isolated
Yes.
and you have no one to talk to,
Yes.
and when you're already an animal lover, that's
true.
your family.
Yeah.
Like my dogs are like my children, and we all mourn over the loss of them, and they become our companions. So yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
That I see that a lot.
The only caution, of course, that I would always give, the one of the negatives sometimes with elderly people having trouble getting around, you have to be careful. Little dogs can trip you
and make
can
you fall. Yes, I've seen that. I've seen broken hips as a
things
result.
like that.
Yeah.
So you really need to be aware of that and focus on where that little dog is as you're walking across the floor. And
Correct. And
and
use your
things like
rollators and
that.
walkers. They're not meant for fashion,
Yeah.
but they're for a reason.
But I'm sure you've seen this too, and I know I have. I've seen videos and interviews where they take animals into nursing homes and things like that.
Yes.
Like a visitation thing, and
Yes.
the results they've seen are incredible. And that's just from a little short visit with a dog or a cat that you've never met before today.
Yes,
But just,
they have service dogs that
Yeah.
go into hospitals and visit sick children and going into a nursing home. That is very common. It's crazy how we just that companionship, that need for companionship, need to feel loved and needed. And when you're in that point in your life where you're not around a lot of people, animals absolutely can help you with as far as the companionship. I see that a lot too.
Yeah, I think that's a real helpful thing. And if you're a little dog in a senior's home, would you give us a call here? No, I'm just kidding. My dog is reaching for the phone right now, probably
Trying to bite it.
to try to call in or something. But and once again, we'd love to hear from you. If you're a senior adult, you've probably got some great ideas of how to cope with these things that we don't know or haven't thought of. If so, give us a call and share that with us, 803-335-3131. Once again, I do want to encourage everyone. You can send in comments. You can send in questions anytime to counselingcalls@gmail.com. That's counselingcalls@gmail.com. Got a lot of folks watching here with Facebook, and we thank y'all for tuning in. Like I said, we don't call out names on this show because it's all confidentiality. I guess I did kind of blow it with the mom comment, didn't I? Well,
I don't think she'd mind. It's
no,
a proud mom moment.
No, it's the least I could do. So, but we thank you for tuning in. But yes, send in those questions and comments, whether you're listening to this live or even if you're listening to a rebroadcast. And, we'd like to hear from you and hear how maybe things you've got, tips and everything that can help people as well. I think, some of those things are real important, that we kind of breezed through a while ago, but really, as I said, just really being reasonable in your expectations of yourself and just accepting that, everybody does things wrong. And so forgiving yourself for that and being able to move forward and look at those positives and all of those things. Now, we talked a lot about isolation, and that kind of got us on the little dog track, I think. But also, let me encourage everyone, and now I'm kind of talking to younger people out there, not just younger people, but especially, you probably don't have any idea how much it means to these senior adults for you to simply, on occasion, go by for a visit and just talk and listen.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Every time when I'm going out to do home visits, I've heard so many times people say, this is the only visit that they'll go on this long rant and say, I know you have to go back to work, but you're probably the only person I'm going to get to see this week. And so that visit where I'm just sitting there and letting them talk about themselves makes them feel so good to just have someone to talk to.
Oh yeah.
That's willing to listen to all their problems.
Yeah. We all want to feel that someone's listening to us,
right?
Especially when you're a radio host. You really do. You struggle with that, but definitely so, and that means so much to them. And and hey, maybe you've heard the stories before, but still that the part that you would actually be willing to listen and just have conversations with them, I know that means so much, and probably that's the number one comment that I hear from them. If I say, hey, do you need anything? And it'll be, just if some folks would come by to see me. And they want their family to come, of course, everyone would, but they also don't mind strangers.
Right.
They really don't care who it is.
You're not picky when you're sitting at home by yourself.
No, when you're isolated and see, and I think a lot of us, we may take it for granted because those of us that are a little younger and we can just, if we want to go talk to somebody, we can go get in our car and go find somebody to talk to.
Right, or use this thing.
Yeah, or use this horrible thing.
We can look at them, a video chat, text message.
We can do all of those things. And I think, and that's another challenge, I think, though I see this getting better, senior adults have a lot of challenges when it comes to technology.
Yes, definitely.
But let me give a shout out. I have seen some grandmas on Facebook, and they are just tearing it up.
There are some. It takes some
I
time.
Think your grandma's been on Facebook.
Oh,
I've seen
my
her
grandma's
on Facebook.
mastering Facebook
Yes,
now.
so.
She had to have a little bit of encouragement and some guidance, but she's got it now.
That's fine. But you see more and more people. I mean, I've had recently like a couple of considerably older folks text me, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is great.
Yeah, when you hear an older person say, don't call me, text me instead,
text
I'm
me.
like, oh,
really?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually had somebody a couple of weeks ago tell me, and I felt really bad for this woman. She said she doesn't get to keep up or socialize because she doesn't know how to work Facebook. And I was like, I just wish that I had 3 hours to sit down and make you a Facebook and teach you how to use it, because that would be her only means of communicating and seeing people.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to promote products here, and I certainly won't give brand names, but I have seen like some of these tablets that they've got. They're supposed to be set up. They're so simple where they can make video calls to the children, and it's like a button. You just hit this, this kid's name, and boom, and you sit there and can talk to them.
Right. So it's not overstimulating and it's confusing.
And it's not overly complex. You don't have to look up a number. You just hit a button and boom. Right. And even if you're in 6 or 8 states away from this person, or if you're down the block still, you can do that.
Yes.
And so I see more and more of our senior adults trying to get on board at least somewhat with technology.
Right.
Because of those things. There are things that now we can do that were just unimaginable just a short while ago.
Right.
So.
And also too, assistive technology is a big thing too, as far as finding devices that can help your activities of daily living easier for you. So people are, especially when you have the hard of hearing community and the blind community, that there's all this assistive technology out there that they're trying to innovate to make communication with other people easier for you. And I think that's really cool too. I don't know if you've seen it. I saw a Facebook link, and a couple of my friends have tried it.
Oh, wow.
But it's there's an app for you to download to help blind people. So
really?
So what they do is you're on call, and the app, they'll call. I guess they contact the app, and the app calls people, and whoever answers the phone first gets connected to this person who's blind, and it can be as simple as, tell me which shirt is red, or help me get the milk out of the fridge, and you're like their eyes for them. And so you help them get what they need, and then the call's over, and you've just literally helped them with the easiest task ever.
That's incredible.
Yeah, that is really cool.
So absolutely. So embrace that technology, folks. It can be your friend. We kind of give technology a rough time because there's so much bad stuff that's on there, and so many ways that it is misused, and and I won't get on my soapbox, because really I am pro technology, because I think there's just as much good that can be done with all of that as well. So that is good. Wow. So want to encourage you, and I want to go back, and you brought something up earlier in the show, and I think it's really important, and that is the stigma when it comes to mental health, and that's for everyone,
Right.
but certainly for senior adults, because you hit on it. They grew up in an environment where just saying, "Hey, guess what? I'm depressed," or
Yeah,
or
you
I'm
don't talk about
"Hey,
it.
I'm thinking about hurting myself." It wasn't going to happen, and a
Right.
lot of times they would encounter abuse and things at someone's hand, and you just didn't talk about it. You never
Right.
admitted
You
it.
suppressed it.
Yes.
And then you get older, and then somehow it comes out in a way that you didn't realize. And then you're like, oh,
Absolutely.
snap. That's because I was abused when I was
Yeah.
a child.
Yeah.
I think that that's a really important thing. I think that my generation is doing a good job at trying to break that stigma, but it's definitely a hard thing to talk about. But I think that when people are aging, and they are being diagnosed with mental health issues.
Sure.
I think even though they're still kind of like on the brink of being embarrassed and not want to talk about it, I see a desire to feel like they can break away from that and talk about it. They just need to feel safe and open, just like you would when you want to talk about something like that.
Absolutely. There's no question about that.
Yes.
All right. So I need to pay some more bills. And then we'll come back for, about our final 14 or 15 minutes here on Counseling Calls. You are listening to WUCC 99.9 FM. Hey, if you'd like to call in, still time to do that, 803-335-3131. Thank you for joining us here on Counseling Calls this evening.
Aiken Christian Counseling offers professional counseling services from a Christian perspective. Pastor Keith Usher is licensed by the state of South Carolina as a licensed professional counselor. He specializes in group and individual therapy. You can access therapy in person at 562 East Pine Log Road, Aiken, or online via webcam from anywhere throughout the state of South Carolina. Please call at 803-341-0506. That's 803-341-0506 for any and all of your counseling needs.
Aiken Christian Church is a non-denominational church that started 7 years ago in the Aiken area. Recently, we have moved back to Aiken at 562 East Pine Log Road. Our services are held on Sundays at 10:30 a.m. We offer traditional preaching and old hymns as well as Holy Communion each week. We are a very welcoming and loving congregation that would love to add you to our family. For more information, go to aikenchristianchurch.com. We hope to see you Sunday.
Life Choices Pregnancy Care Center of Aiken is open Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. and Tuesdays from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., offering free pregnancy tests, referrals for free sonograms, parenting classes, and material resources for baby, mom, and dads. Call for an appointment today at 803-649-9890.
All right, back here on Counseling Calls, right here on your Thursday night on 99.9 FM, talking to Sabrina Balls here from the, I'm going to get it right this time, Lower Savannah Council of Governments. That's as far as I can go. I can't do the whole thing.
All right. Well, it's AAA. It's easy to remember. Area Agency on Aging.
Okay, the triple A. That is good. All right, so obviously, when we are talking about mental health and senior adults, of course, one of the big topics is going to come up is going to be dementia.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about that.
Right. So dementia is an umbrella term. There's many different types of dementia. Most commonly is diagnosed as Alzheimer's. There's also other forms of dementia that can coexist with other chronic conditions. A statistic for you guys, in the United States, 1 out of 10 older adults, and by older adults, that's someone who is 65 or older, 1 out of 10 older adults suffer from some form of dementia, which is around 92,000 Americans. And I also read that it was projected to increase by 30% between the years of 2019 and 2025. So not only is this affecting a large population now, it's also projected to continually affect people on an even larger scale. So dementia, we have a saying at Lower Savannah that we like to talk about. We call it 2 halves make a whole. So a lot of times when there's a senior couple, one of them is more physically dependent and one's more mentally dependent, and we call that a 2 halves make a whole. And so that's what we refer to it as. But the person with memory disorders, a lot of the things that they're facing, and it's very hard to see things. I think that's what's opened my eyes a lot about dementia is trying to learn things from the perspective of someone who has dementia. But when you're talking about losing your mental independence, you're no longer to make decisions on your own. You can't use your telephone. You can't remember dates and times. You can't manage your money anymore. You're forgetting to turn the stove off, or you can't prepare meals anymore because you don't remember how. You can't manage your own medications either, which can be very dangerous as well.
Sure.
So you're talking about a lot of different things, and it's also too that will kind of leads into being a caregiver for someone with dementia is also a very difficult thing as well.
Yeah, that's a difficult one too, and we want to talk about that in a minute. But we also want to make it clear, dementia. We're talking about a broad spectrum here.
Right.
It's and of course, everybody when you say dementia, usually they think Alzheimer's.
Right.
And although they are intertwined, there are a lot of reasons that you might experience dementia. Does not mean you are getting Alzheimer's just because you have some dementia. And it can be caused from all kinds of things.
Right. There are some health conditions that mimic the symptoms of dementia. Like a very common one is having a urinary tract infection. A lot of people will kind of freak out and jump the gun and say, Mom's talking out of her head. She's acting crazy. She's got dementia. And it's like, bam, overnight, all of a sudden she's showing signs of dementia. And then you go take her to the doctor and she's got a urinary tract infection.
And a few antibiotics later.
And the horses are gone. Back. And and all is right with the world again. So the horses aren't speaking to you in the stable next to your hospital bed anymore.
And all those things.
Yes. So, but there's dementia, and it also too is something that I have learned because I also have my minor in communication sciences and disorders, and was a focus on dementia and any kind of disorder that affects your speech or your language, and how you operate that within your brain as well to organize your sentences and know what to say. But with dementia, there's a huge difference between age-related forgetfulness and dementia. Those are two different things. So if you are afraid that your loved one is displaying signs of dementia and you just know something's not right, go to the doctor. Don't Google the symptoms like I do because I freak out. But you need to go to the doctor and make sure that that's diagnosed because they're trained professionals in determining what's age-related forgetfulness and what is a sign of actual, a disorder, a memory disorder.
Yes, so there's all sorts of things that come into play there, and there's probably no question that's probably the greatest fear in the senior adult community is that they would get Alzheimer's, and because it is such a devastating disease.
It really is, and it's really I try to think of things in the perspective of someone who has dementia. Not only is it devastating for you to see that loved one go through that, but seeing someone who's realizing they're going through the stage of dementia, like when they're still in the kind of mild to moderate stage, and they they know that they have dementia and they have to accept that diagnosis,
Yes.
it's really hard for them to accept that they are going to wake up and not know who anyone is one day. And it's
Yeah.
also it's really, really hard for for your loved ones. I mean, no one wants to wake up one day and have their father forget who they are. You know, I mean, that's a really, really hard thing to go through.
difficult, yeah.
Yes, it is. And I don't think a lot of people even understand the mental and the physical effects that dementia have. A lot of people will tell me, you know, oh, well, my mom's refusing to take a shower now.
Yeah.
My mom's doing this, my mom's doing that. She's just being so difficult. And you don't, you know, you kind of need to think of it as in like with someone who's on the autism spectrum, there's overstimulation that can occur. To make you, you know, you're overwhelmed and you just shut down.
Sure.
So it's the same way with dementia. Being overstimulated, giving them too many options to choose from, or sensory sensations. You know, your depth perception's affected, your hearing and vision can be affected. You know, a lot of people with dementia don't like taking showers anymore. And after, you know, learning throughout my career and stuff, I learned that was a sensory thing. That someone with dementia might all of a sudden not like the sensation of water trickling
Really?
down on them. And you know, they have a lot of times their internal body temperature's off, so they would be wearing a sweater when it's 100 degrees
Exactly.
outside. And then you have sundowners where, you know,
Yes.
they get kind of rowdy and irritable and aggravated very
Yes.
easily at nighttime.
Yes.
Because there's no sense of time. There's no sense of time at all. Now they can still tell you what happened in 1951
Yeah.
at the sock hop, you know,
Yeah.
but they can't tell you what they had for breakfast an hour ago.
Do you know how impressed I am that you know the phrase sock hop? Excuse me, folks. I just had a proud father moment here. That is good. And I do want to
You
touch
trained
on
me well.
something. I hope so, because we are winding down near the end. So I did want to get this. We talked about caregivers, and that's
Yes.
another thing. When you are the caregiver of these folks, that's
Yes.
a very difficult thing, especially when it's a loved one.
Right. And I'm actually with a coworker right now. We are leading a class called Powerful Tools for Caregivers. And this class has really helped me kind of embrace and give support to caregivers. And a really important thing that I wanted to hit on is that in this class we talk about how when you become a caregiver, you're basically putting your whole life on hold
Right.
to care for someone 24/7. But the problem with caregivers is that they treat this long-term illness like it's an acute illness. Like if your child gets sick and has the flu, you have to drop your life to take
Right.
care of them for a week.
Sure.
But with a long-term illness, you can't approach things that way because then you experience caregiver burnout. And that's
Absolutely.
what this class is about. It's about managing self-care,
Okay.
which is a really important thing for caregivers to do. And what I always tell people when we're teaching the class is you can't pour from an empty cup. You have to take care of yourself physically and mentally and not get burnout so you can be the caregiver that you need to be for that person.
Absolutely. Now, who all has access to this class?
So right now, what we've been doing, it's a 6-week class. You
Okay.
go to the class once a week for 6 consecutive
Okay.
weeks, and there's an hour-and-a-half version and there's a 2.5-hour
Okay.
version. So we've done the 2.5-hour version one in Aiken already
Okay.
this past fall,
Okay.
and everyone really enjoyed it. And we serve 6 counties, so right now we're
Okay.
doing one in Orangeburg,
Okay.
and we're halfway through that right now.
All right.
But when we have interest in that, that's something that we would like to do in all of the counties
Okay.
that we serve.
All right, so maybe we could get some information out
Absolutely.
about that when it comes. Well, thank you for being on Counseling Calls tonight. This has been a lot of fun and very informative. I've learned a lot of stuff. Not that I won't admit that I've learned stuff from my daughter, but oh well, it happens sometimes.
The cycle
Listen,
of life.
thank y'all for being here on Counseling Calls. Send those questions or comments, counselingcalls@gmail.com. Next week, my special guest will be you. We're going to be talking about depression, many types of depressions, and hopefully we're going to have folks that will call in about this, and we're going to try to arrange that where we'll have some folks call in to talk to us, and we're going to do a show. We were talking about a lot of mental health issues, and so we'll talk a lot about that next week on our show. Until then, thank you for tuning in. Thank you to all the listeners, and here's wishing you good mental health. You've been listening to Counseling Calls, brought to you each week at this time by Life Choices Pregnancy Care Center of Aiken, Aiken Christian Church, and Aiken Christian Counseling. Join us again next week for more radiotherapy right here on 99.9 FM and Facebook Live.